Tomoya Aki is a second-year student, an otaku, and a spokesperson of a video game club, Blessing Software. He, with his club members, Megumi Kota, Eriri Spencer's Sawamura, Yutahaka Sumigoka, and Michiru Hyoto, heads out to scouting locations to gather materials for their video game project. Eriri, being the illustrator, stars Megumi as a model for sketches. Meanwhile, Yutaha lures Tomoya away and forces him to act in a romantic situation, but they are interrupted by jealous Eriri, and they start arguing. Seeing the situation, Michiru forces him to the lake, where they play in the water, but are interrupted by Megumi as they were in an awkward position. At their inn, they play ping-pong, and later at night, Eriri, Yutaha, and Michiru ask Tomoya why they were forced into the club without getting repaid for the tasks. Megumi comes to his rescue, and they go for a walk, while he talks about her being so ordinary, plain, and not standing out among the group members, just like a background character. She expresses her hopes that the game will be a success and that people will enjoy it. 6 months ago, before the scouting trip, Tomoya encounters Megumi in the beautiful site of Cherry Blossom, as she is running after her flying parrot, and he retrieves it. His meeting with Megumi piques his interest in the development of a dating game, starring her as the heroine. As he learns about Eriri of the art club from his friend, he meets up with her and discusses his idea for the game, and that side of Megumi and Cherry Blossom will make a perfect prologue for a dating game. But she refuses to illustrate for him and says he isn't serious about it. Later at lunch, Tomoya reaches out to Yutaha, who is well known for writing novels, but she turns him down as well and labels it as undesiring. After school, the same girl comes to him asking to return the parrot that he had picked a few days ago. At first, he doesn't recognize her, but when he does, to his surprise, he runs after her, abandoning his plan to meet Eriri in the AV room. Meanwhile, Eriri runs into Yutaha in the AV room and starts arguing. Yutaha and Eriri decide to work on Tomoya's game only if he improves his proposal. Tomoya takes Megumi for dinner and admires his beauty while noticing her reserved nature and lack of presence, and both discuss how they met. She labels it as a coincidence while calling herself boring and plain. Tomoya opposes her statement and says she is an undeveloped character, having no traits that will stand out except her cuteness. Meanwhile, Eriri and Yutaha find him in the cafe, and Tomoya introduces them as the members of his game creation circle, and both of them keep denying his proposal, and it ends up with an argument, resulting in a fight between Eriri, Yutaha, and Tomoya. As they try to convince him to give up, Megumi disappears suddenly. The next day, Tomoya invites Megumi to his house and makes her play a dating sim to make her understand the material for the game. She enjoys the experience but is unable to understand the concept of its appeal. She agrees to stay over and place its sequel. By the time she finishes it, the sun is up. With her dizzy head, she agrees to join the circle. Yutaha keeps rejecting his revised proposals and gives him a final deadline at the end of the Golden Week. To write a convincing proposal, he invites Megumi to his house, as she is on a family vacation, therefore is unable to come over. Finally, Tomoya decides to get serious and locks his games and light novels away to focus on the proposal, but ends up reading them. Meanwhile, Eriri comes to his house and works on Dojin as usual. Later, Yutaha visits him as well. At night, he calls Megumi and tells her to not worry about him and should enjoy the trip. She then asks what he finds appealing in her and whether she needs improvements or not, and promises to improve herself. The next day, he tries to focus on writing the proposal, but ends up reading light novels, saying a little break wouldn't hurt, and wastes another day. He packs up all of his novels to focus on writing, but ends up wasting time by thinking he has plenty of time left. Then he goes out to the same spot where he met Megumi to get more ideas for the proposal. There, he runs into Megumi dressed up in the same dress as the day they met, with a charming personality. She asks whether this side of hers is enough to be the heroine of his game. Megumi reveals that Eriri and Yutaha helped her with the jet-up and lines. Meanwhile, Tomoya is still stunned by her charming sight. Megumi enjoys reading Yutaha's novel and says it's unbelievable that she wrote it while maintaining her top grades, and is eager for her upcoming novel. Tomoya is interviewing Yutaha for his famous blog. At first, she refused to get interviewed by him, but was forced to do so by her assistant. While her assistant reveals her book became a big success because he featured it on his blog site. Later, Yutaha agrees to accept his proposal, almost making him fly. As a result, Eriri joins the circle as well. In the AV room, they plan the game's plot, and Tomoya sets the schedule to release the game on Winter Comicade. To address funding issues, Tomoya is forced to work multiple part-time jobs. While working, he is shocked to see Megumi with another boy and makes a fuss over it. Later at school, Megumi tells him that he was her cousin, Kiichi. But Tomoya is jealous and asks her to stay away from him, as it was a bad impression of her heroine character, and that she should go shopping with him instead, Kiichi. To which she agrees. Finally, they start working on the game. Yutaha works on the plot, while Eriri draws sketches of Megumi. but Eriri is annoyed with her plain expression as she is unable to sketch desired expressions. As Megumi leaves for self-practice, Tomoya and Eriri discuss her expressionless and plain personality, and it's a challenge. Then he asks Eriri for date advice. At first, she advises him, but after learning his attention, she is enraged. As they argue, Yutaha listens to their conversation and gets inspiration for the plot. The next day, Yutaha is done with writing the plot, and Tomoya is surprised to see the plot while requesting a better ending. But Eriri is annoyed, as she wants to finish the illustrations as soon as possible. While shopping with Megumi, Tomoya is extremely uncomfortable and irritated by interactions with what he calls normal people. Megumi buys him glasses as thanks for accompanying her. In a flashback, Tomoya encounters Yutaha at a book signing as a fan. She is quite surprised by his comprehension of her book. In the present day, after missing a scheduled meeting with him, she catches up in a storm and recalls a memory when she tried to hand over a final manuscript of her book to him to hear his opinions. But he refused to read it, saying he doesn't deserve to read the final volume before everyone else, and changed the ending based on his hopes. Till today, Tomoya is puzzled whether she will forgive him or not for his refusal 6 months ago. While recalling the same memory, he rushes to Yutaha in the storm, and she is stunned to see him. Her assistant books them a twin room in the hotel, and Tomoya takes a bath. There he requests her to make him a successful creator, so she helps him with the plot, and both work all night on the plot. In the morning, Yutaha acknowledges him as a creator before leaving. As the deadline for Eriri's doujin approaches near, she invites Tomoya over to her house and forces him to role-play, so she may get some inspiration for the plot of her doujin. The next day at school, summer break is announced. As Megumi has changed her hairstyle, Tomoya is upset that it may ruin the character image of the heroine and asks for an explanation. As Tomoya continues to explain, his childhood friend Izumi, also an otaku, joins them. She gives him a ticket to summer Comicade while inviting him to her doujin stall, Fancy Wave, and reveals she is a true student of his. Tomoya and Eriri walk home together. On the way, they meet their old friend Iori, the spokesperson of a doujin club, Rough and Rough. As Iori is looking for an illustrator, he tries to hire Eriri for his club. In Tomoya's room, Eriri writes the manuscript in silence while Tomoya scans the panels. Megumi stands there, looking at the panels in hopes her role will not have any nudity. Later, Tomoya and Megumi played a dating sim that Eriri suggested and encouraged her by saying she has turned out to be a fine otaku so quickly. As Eriri hurries up to finish the manuscript, Tomoya asks whether she is going to accept Iori's offer or not. She answers that she has made up her mind that she'll illustrate for him. Finally, she finishes the manuscript and starts playing the game and mentions that she hasn't touched this game in 8 years. Megumi attends summer Comicade with Tomoya and is stunned by the crowd. They meet up with Izumi and help her with the stall. He picks one of the doujin samples and is surprised by her work. He makes a large poster to boost sales, which work. When Comicade is over, he meets up with Eriri, who is holding Izumi's book. She is jealous that he has never reacted to his artwork, as he did with Izumi's, and runs away with teary eyes. At night, he wakes up and finds himself next to Yutaha and freaks out while Megumi brings in some juice. They force him to explain what happened between him and Eriri, so they may help to fix the issue. Yutaha reveals that she has lost her pride as a creator and advises him on how to resolve the issue. Following Yutaha's advice, he climbs up a tree in Eriri's garden and asks her to run away with him. He takes her to the elementary they attended. There, after a long argument, she cries out her insecurities while Tomoya says he is to blame for this. Later, she agrees to return as his best illustrator while he carries her on his back. The next day, Eriri finishes the sketches and Tomoya names it Blessing Software. On Tomoya's request, Iori takes Izumi as an illustrator, which resolves Eriri's insecurities. On video conference, Tomoya, Yutaha, and Megumi discuss the development of the game since it's a dating sim. Without cute girls, people will lose interest, unlike in novels. Later, he heads for a bath, but there, he runs into his cousin, Michiru, who is almost naked. After school in the AV room, as they are working on the game, Tomoya receives an email from Michiru, but Eriri grasps his phone and now is under investigation by Yutaha about his relationship with Michiru. Tomoya explains she is his cousin and now living with him after she fought with her family. When he returns, he finds his otaku material dumped in the garbage and asks Michiru about it. Meanwhile, she hates anything related to the word otaku and orders him to stop being an otaku and that he has a future to worry about. Later, they discuss her band and his otaku activities. Then he takes a bath, and while doing so, he hears Michiru playing music. He is touched by her music and decides to add her music to the game. Tomoya introduces Michiru to other members and that she will do the background music for the game, while Eriri is overwhelmed by witnessing another childhood friend of Tomoya since they were infants. As Michiru hates the term otaku and anything associated with it, she and Yutaha argue over it and refuses to do music for the game because she has to work on her band and find a manager. To make Tomoya quit his otaku life, she asks him to be the manager. Meanwhile, Megumi is learning to script and helps Eriri with game development, as they are a week behind the schedule. At the coffee shop, she shows him the undeveloped game on which she has been working, and teases him about his relationship with Michiru, and he is sorry for his inappropriate behavior. Then they both listen to Michiru's music, which makes Megumi wonder if she is not related to Otaku culture. Later at night, he surprises Michiru with a booking of her first live concert and asks her to go back. As the concert approaches, Tomoya, the manager of Icy Tail, addresses the band members that they are warming the crowd as they don't have a large fan base, and they are performing at last out of the 6 bands, and their name wasn't even mentioned on the tickets and flyers. Instead of getting cold feet, Michiru is fired up for their first concert, while Yutaha is concerned as he became the manager without consulting them. While forcing eriri, the first thing they see as they enter is that Tomoya and Michiru are in an awkward position. In the meantime, Yutaha is concerned about the dresses of the band. Finally, Michiru performs one of her originals at the end, which is praised by the audience. As she ended the song with I love you, eriri is extremely jealous and mad, thinking it was addressed to Tomoya. On their way back, eriri and Megumi grow closer, while Yutaha has finished the plot for the first round. All of the members review the first round of the game together and give thumbs up. Even Michiru is excited. Tomoya is thankful to everyone and announces the completion of the first round. In the meantime, eriri starts working on the remaining sketches and Yutaha on the other route says 2 months are remaining before Winter Comicade.